Okay, picture this. Why would a 30-year-old medieval man be buried with a massive, heavy stone literally wedged into his jaws? Well, back in 2004, an archaeological dig at Kilteasheen over in Ireland unearthed something that is, honestly, just truly disturbing. We're talking crushed skulls, corpses with their legs brutally twisted and bent back over these large rocks. I mean, these bodies were deliberately mutilated. The message left in the dirt was abundantly clear. Someone was desperately trying to keep these people in their graves.
Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're going to unravel a visceral archaeological mystery and hunt down the true, terrifying origins of our fear of the undead. So go ahead and forget those glamorous, sparkling Hollywood predators for a minute. What we're actually exploring today is a deeply rooted, historical terror, a very real panic that compelled ordinary, everyday people to violently desecrate the dead.
Okay, let's dive into this. Here is our roadmap for today. We'll start with the skeletons of Kilteasheen, move to the terror of the revenants, the science of vampires, the birth of the modern vampire, and finally, the undead in modern Romania.
Section 1. The Skeletons of Kilteasheen, the Archaeology of Fear.
So our story begins when archaeologists were just looking for a 12th century bishop's palace out in Western Ireland. Standard stuff, right? But instead, beneath the flagstones of a ruined building, they unearthed between 30 and 40 human skeletons. These poor souls were literally stacked on top of one another in shallow graves, totally exiled to the very edge of the cemetery in a ditch. But it was how they were buried that really shocked everyone. This right here is what archaeologists call a deviant burial. Now you gotta remember, in early medieval Christianity, burials were highly standardized. Bodies faced east to west, waiting to rise for the end of the world. Simple. But a deviant burial, that shows a deliberate and honestly often violent nonconformity to keep a person bound to the earth. Those heavy triangular rocks forced into the mouths of the Kilteasheen men, those absolutely weren't accidents of nature. They were calculated, desperate attempts to block their souls from re-entering their bodies and reanimating them as monsters.
Naturally, the archaeological team wanted to know exactly when this terror took place, so they sent the bones off for carbon-14 dating. And the results? The dates came back overlapping right between the years 720 and 760 AD. This is absolutely monumental. It means these bizarre, violent burials happened centuries older than the earliest known English vampire folklore. No way, right?
But why were 8th century Irish people so terrified? We'll take a look at this incredible quote from an 8th century Irish penitential text called the First Synod of St. Patrick. It says, "Anybody who believes in vampires should be put outside the church." That's a direct quote, and it aligns perfectly with the physical skeletons they found. Historians think that the arrival and spread of Christianity during this era severely disrupted the old pagan belief systems, and that clash basically triggered this intense cultural anxiety. It created a very real physical phobia of the living dead.
Section 2. Terror of the Revenants, the Medieval Undead.
As we move forward in time and jump across the Irish Sea to medieval England, this fear of the undead didn't fade away. It evolved. They started calling it a revenant, which was their term for a corpse that returns from the dead to haunt the living. These revenants were usually blamed for waking up neighbors in the dead of night or suddenly bringing plague or death to their former communities. So the crucial point here is that this wasn't just pagan superstition anymore. It was actually being fostered by medieval church concepts. People at the time really believed that evil souls, the ones being tortured in purgatory for their earthly sins, could literally escape and reanimate their rotting bodies to come back and inflict harm on the living. And to fight back, these terrified villagers resorted to a horrific list of desperate measures. It's almost like a medieval horror movie. They would dig up bodies and decapitate them, or literally tear out and burn the hearts. They drove iron nails through shoulders and ankles, weighed the bodies down with massive boulders, or, and get this, in the case of the infamous Witch of Berkeley in the 1060s, they sewed the corpse into a stag skin bound with iron chains and locks. Can you imagine? Or take the two peasants from Stappenhill in 1085. After their neighbors suddenly started dropping dead, the villagers ripped their hearts out and burned them on a hill. The terror was absolute.
Section 3. The Science of Vampires. 18th Century Panics.
Okay, let's leave forward from the Middle Ages all the way to the 18th century, specifically Serbia in 1732. There was this massive village panic where 17 people died suddenly in just a 3-month span. So the Austrian military sends in a highly trained doctor, Johannes Flukinger, to investigate these claims of vampirism. He was supposed to use science to disprove the myths once and for all. But when Flückiger actually opened the graves, well, he documented symptoms that terrified all of Europe. He reported seeing quote-unquote vampires with fresh, vivid skin, plump, undecayed bodies, and fresh extravascular blood at the mouth. But wait, modern medical reality tells a completely different story. And this brilliantly illustrates the divide. We know today this is just natural decomposition. Expanding corpse gases cause the body to naturally bloat, the tissues swell, making them look plump and healthy, and stomach fluids leak out post-mortem, looking exactly like fresh blood. These doctors were completely misinterpreting natural, everyday decay as supernatural life.
Section 4. Birth of the Modern Vampire. From Folklore to Fiction.
You know, Dr. Flückiger's chilling scientific report didn't quell the fears. It actually amplified them. His official medical report was sent back to Belgrade and promptly leaked to European newspapers. This sparked a massive continent-wide rumor panic. Suddenly, all across Central Europe, the graves of the recently deceased were being violently dug up, and corpses were being beheaded. It was wild. A localized superstition had become a global media sensation. And it's this exact 18th century panic that directly fueled our modern pop culture monsters. First, Flückiger's medical panics sweep Europe. Then, in 1819, Dr. John Polidori takes those gruesome reports of rotting revenants and romanticizes them, creating this attractive, dangerous Byronic hero. Finally, Bram Stoker harnesses those very same 18th century reports mixed with his knowledge of Eastern Europe to publish Dracula in 1898. Just like that, the foul, diseased, dirt-covered revenant was completely transformed into the sophisticated, aristocratic predator we know today.
Section 5. The Undead in Modern Romania. Superstitions in the 21st Century. Now, you might be thinking that with Stoker's fiction and the undeniable advancements of modern forensic science, this visceral medieval fear of the undead has completely vanished into history, right? Well, I gotta warn you, it hasn't. In the exact same year those skeletons were found in Ireland, 2004, a family in the small Romanian village of Marotino de Sus illegally exhumed their recently deceased uncle Petre Toma. Why? His niece truly believed he had become a strigoi, which is the Romanian word for the undead, and that he was the cause of her mysterious illness. In a ritual that is virtually identical to what those Stappenhill peasants did in 1095 England, these modern villagers dug him up, cut out his heart, and burned it to ashes. In 2004. But why do this today? Well, the locals justify these rituals by stating, and I quote, "The dead have to be dead, not undead or half-dead. So they are doing them something good, not something bad. It's about universal cosmic harmony." This is such an important distinction. Unlike those evil Hollywood vampires that have to be destroyed out of pure hatred or self-defense, destroying a modern strigoi is actually considered an act of love. It's done to help a trapped soul successfully transition to the next world, restoring spiritual balance to the whole community.
Let's zoom out for a second and see how this all builds, because when we look back at this timeline, the unbroken continuity is just staggering. We go from 8th century deviant burials and penitential texts in Ireland straight to 11th century revenant chronicles in England. Then we hit the 18th century medical vampire panics in Serbia, which leads directly to the 19th century publication of Dracula, all the way up to 21st century strigoi rituals in Romania. It's an absolutely astonishing 1,200-year history that proves just how deep-rooted this cultural terror truly is. So what does this all mean? It leaves us with a pretty profound question. If modern science can flawlessly explain decomposition, why do our deepest, darkest superstitions about the undead still survive today? Maybe it shows that when we're faced with sudden death, grief, and the terrifying unknown, humanity's ancient hardwired need for ritual, community protection, and control, well, it will always defy pure logic. Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer. Keep exploring the evidence and keep questioning the world around you.